Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin and this is the show where you can have your property related questions answered by our team of property experts. And joining me today is Nikki Reid, founder of Nikki Homes, independent property consultants. Welcome, Nikki.
Hiya.
And joining Nikki is Adrian McClinton, principal and head of dispute resolution at EMW Law. Welcome to you.
Hello.
Good. Okay, well, we'll get straight on with the questioning. And Nikki, you're going first. I'm about to market my property in what I understand is quite a difficult market. I've had 4 agents pitch for the instruction. The rough valuation of the property is around £700,000. However, the agent's advice varies by a spread of almost 200,000. I just don't know which agent I could choose. Obviously, the temptation is to appoint the one quoting the highest price, but I'm not really sure that the price is achievable. Any advice, please?
So I'm actually just going to pick that question a little bit first.
Go on.
I wouldn't say we're in a difficult market. I would say we're actually in a very normal market.
Are we?
Yeah, I would actually say it's just the fact that everyone got very used to COVID market, which was insane. And we've had a crazy couple of years, which has been great, but not normal at all. So now we're getting back to a normal market. Still 1 in 2 buyers are cash. So really, we're not in an abnormal market. When it comes to valuations, yes, what I would say to people is, I don't know why, but some agents don't like sharing statistics. And statistics is really where you get to the truth of the matter. If you've got an agent that can say to you, look, I get paid on sale, or I get paid a commission on listing, and I have to list this many houses a month, then you know what their motivator and their driver is. So ask the agent, are you paid a commission for listing the property? Are you paid a commission on sale? Or do you earn any commission at all? Are you just on targets? What have you sold previously that was originally hit the asking price that it was listed for? Now, you don't have to rely on an agent to do that either. There are third parties out there.
I was going to say on the portals, there are quite a number. You can just chime your street in, can't you? And,
yes.
And you'll get a factual figure. The only trouble is with that, as we've talked about in a previous show, if Land Registry take a year to register something, you've got to think how up-to-date that information you're getting is, haven't you?
There are a couple of websites that actually work on Land Registry database. So they look at what it was listed for and what it's completed at on Land Registry. Now, I'm really pedantic because of how much we get over asking. I'm really pedantic and I look at that all the time. And I was looking at it the other day, and a lot of our stock that is completed even in the last 3 months is on there. So it is quite up to date, to be honest with you, with figures. And that will tell you the truth of what the agent's actually achieving. And it's not calculated by what it's achieving if it was reduced on Rightmove or on any of the portals and then it's sold. It's calculated on the original listing price. So it will tell you whether your agent's on the board.
So that information is going to be pretty up to date, isn't it?
Yeah.
Good, okay. Well, why do you think it is taking so long to register this information, Adrian?
COVID, isn't it?
Are you sure it's not? Are you sure it's not the migrants?
I think it's a number of things. I do think that it's a combination of people working from home, so therefore there's perhaps not that pressure that there used to be on the actual staff that make up the Land Registry. There has been, as Nikki has pointed out, quite a frantic period of activity, which has created a backlog. And now we are approaching something like normality. I mean, I'm not an expert in the market, and so I'll leave that up to people like Nikki. But if Nikki says that it's actually we're approaching a period of normality, then who am I to question that? But I think that the backlog still needs to be worked through.
I think that applies to a number of things, doesn't it?
It does.
Quite a few things the government are in control of.
You're very topical.
It's quite interesting. I mean, to get sense out of data, you have to be very careful. I mean, I remember whilst COVID was on, they were said, oh, you know, the country agents are really having a great time, you know, right out in sort of far east of England or somewhere. And they're up 50%. But whereas a London agent might be selling 20 properties a week, that probably country agent might be selling 1. So if they sell 2, you know, the percentage looks amazing, doesn't it? But the fact of the matter is it's not really reflecting the true market position. And I think Nick is right. I think, you know, we go through these little hotspots caused by various different things, and you start to think that's normal. And it's not. Nikki, how long, is there a figure that's sort of industry-wide on how long it takes to get an offer from instruction these days? Do they calculate that?
So when we had COVID, offers were coming in between like 3 and 7 days. There was a vast amount of buyers on a property. But also, it's not just about the offer, it's about the right offer for the vendor, which I think is really important. But yeah, we are up to about 20 days to 28 days on average for an offer. But again, that might not be the right offer because the media keep telling all the lovely buyers that the market's crashing. Sometimes you're getting buyers coming in and going, well, I'm going to try this price. Yeah, but nothing's happened. Nothing's happened. The media are telling you it's crashing. Us as agents are seeing the market isn't crashing yet, and there's still a lot of buyers out there. And until we get stock levels back up to where they should be, we're still going to remain with a strong buying market.
Right. Okay. Well, I think that's fairly clear, isn't it? I think we have to just take a calm view of the market, really, don't we? And there is no magic answer to selling something, is there? And even you're right, even if the prices reduce significantly, it might not just do the trick. It might not be that's the real problem. Do you agree?
Absolutely.
Well, there we are. Absolute answer from a lawyer. That's something.
Doesn't happen very often. They've got it on camera.
Don't you usually hold your hands together and say it's a grey area?
Only if I'm charging by the hour.
Right. Okay. All right. Adrian, your question. The government is proposing a number of changes to letting regulations, probably being introduced next year, maybe. As a landlord, I'm interested to know if those proposed changes contradict the terms of my lease with the freeholder. Which term takes preference, the new regulations or the terms of my existing lease?
Right. Well, I think you're referring to the much publicised Renters Reform Bill,
Correct.
Which is working its way through Parliament. The reality is that, and it has, well, the reality is it's caught the public's attention mainly because of changes to other parts of the law relating to leasehold, enfranchisement, extending the lease, etc. But I think one of the changes that's probably hit the headlines, and the British public get very exercised about dogs, is the ability for tenants to ask their landlord whether they can have a dog within the property itself. The reality is that the Renters Reform Bill is not going to change the relationship between the landlord and the landlord's superior landlord, more often not the freeholder. And if the landlord, within their lease, it states that they cannot have a pet within the property, dog, for instance, then the landlord will be acting reasonably in refusing the tenant permission to have a dog.
I mean, I kind of take the point, but I think this business of leases is quite interesting. My personal view is that we're in a time now where, you know, late 80s assured shortholds came in, they suited the market at the time, they suited the government's ambitions to, you know, get more landlords into the market to ease the housing crisis. I mean, how many times lately have you perhaps seen, you know, a cut and pasted lease that some agents produced, that, you know, you're living in a 70-storey block and it says you shall clean your chimney 3 times a year and mow the lawn regularly, you know, silly things like that. I do wonder whether we're in an age now where we need new types of leases to fit today's kind of population, which is far more flexible in terms of location than it used to be 20 years ago, for instance. A transient society is much more common now. You get young people who say, well, I want to try living there, I want to try living over there, I want to move my job and go over there. Well, renting's perfect for that, and that's a very European ethos, isn't it? But we need leases to cater and cope with that. And I'm not sure the government, when they bring these rules in, I'm not sure the terms and conditions of renting a house are going to be anything like the terms and conditions you need for renting in a block of, say, 70 stories and 500, 600, 700 flats.
Not at all.
You know, and I think we need to look at that now.
Well, more often than not, you certainly should see the terms and conditions and obligations that a landlord has to their freeholder. You should see those reflected in the assured short-hold tenancy. Yeah. Absolutely, because ultimately the landlord will be held responsible by the freeholder for any acts of any occupant in that property.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think there's a responsibility on freeholders, management and all sorts of people. I know in the block I live in, they say to agents, well, look, here are the key points of the lease. Please make sure you include that in any sublease that you provide. But not everybody's that diligent, are they?
But, sorry.
And I was just saying, I don't think some landlords actually know. Because we've had properties where we've said, can you have a pet in the building? They're like, I don't know. Is there a restriction on a lease on allowing a pet? And it's like, they don't actually read. Some people don't actually read stuff.
That's always the case, isn't it? Not always the case, but it's quite often the case with landlords, and not understanding that they, in fact, are tenants themselves, just for a very long period of time.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's it. I mean, there is a block down here, quite a high-rise block, where they've allowed dogs in, and it's got in a shocking state because the flats are effectively three-sided sort of glass boxes, which is not good. There's nowhere for a dog to exercise, and probably nowhere in the vicinity really either. And a friend of mine who works for the management team, so, you know, he goes in and there's dogs tied to door handles while they've gone to the shops and things like it. It's quite shocking. So I think, again, suitability of terms for a building are quite important, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. And in fairness, the changes that are coming in does reflect that reality, that a landlord must consider every application for permission
on its merit,
on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's good. Anything to add, Nikki?
Well, just obviously what you were saying, I was going to say that obviously if you're in a 7th floor apartment, a dog isn't practical. It's not fair to have a dog.
No.
Even a small one?
No. But you see, don't...
Well, what, a chihuahua or something? Fine.
Adrian, if you've seen these buildings with the concierges there, you know, you get somebody coming and say, oh, look, my dog's only this big. Do you mind? It's only that. But then what do you say when the next one comes in and it's only that big? And then that big.
And where does it stop?
It's not
Where
fair.
does it stop? And these poor guys on the desks, you know, I always say that their hardest job is to say no, because they've got to greet the tenant the next morning with a smile, and you know, so you don't want to fall out, you don't want to cause conflict, but you know, common sense has to prevail, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm a dog lover. I've got a dog, and I still wouldn't rent a flat or buy a flat with a dog, because it's not fair on my dog.
No.
But we are moving away, you know, we're moving into society, and you talked earlier about society being transient, but we are moving to a place where renters, because they are growing in size, are demanding more rights. There's votes to be won in that, and you can see actually the Conservatives and Labour are trying to woo those particular voters.
Okay, well, thank you both very much for that. That's all we've got time for in this half of the show. So join me again after the break, when we'll be asking Adrian and Nikki more of your questions. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin, and with me are Nikki Reid and Adrian McClinton. Nikki, the Bank of England has warned that current interest rates may be enforced for some time to come. Although the cost of the mortgage has gone up, at least deposits are seemingly coming down. What effect do the panel think this will have on the market nationwide over the short to medium term?
Well, I think it really depends on what type of buyer you have in your area. I know we're finding that it's not really having an effect. And obviously last week they did bring some of the rates down on mortgages, which had another healthy little bonus. But ultimately, as I said earlier, you've got 1 and 2 buyers are cash buyers now. So we've still got a huge amount of cash buyers out there. And first-time buyers coming to the market, the interest rate might seem high, but they've known no difference because they're a first-time buyer. So in effect, to them, it's no different. They've never known anything different to what it is now. And if you actually look historically as well, if you look back even in the 90s, obviously houses were cheap. But if you look at the interest rates, my grandfather always taught me about 17% interest rates when he was buying property. And if you look at the amount of money of your income that went on your mortgage percentage-wise versus the amount of your income now that goes on your mortgage percentage-wise, it was actually much higher back then still. Even though houses were cheaper, a bigger amount of your salary was paying for your home. So I don't think that it's going to have a huge effect. The other thing as well, if you look at, is mortgages at the moment, which I think is a big telltale point really. You know how normally 2-year mortgages are cheaper than the 5-year mortgages?
Sure.
The 5-year mortgages are cheaper than the 2-year mortgages.
So why is that?
Because the bank obviously think that the interest rate's going to go down, don't they? So they want to lock you in to make as much money out of you for now.
I think doesn't it to a great extent depend on where your mortgage provider is actually taking their money from. I think people forget that those people have to borrow money too. So, you know, a mortgage provider will borrow the money over so many years, probably do it in 5-year tranches or 10-year tranches. So that can affect too the particular rate for any timed mortgage, can't it, I think? You're looking at me as if I'm wrong.
Well, no, I'm not. I try not to think about it because I failed to lock in my mortgage last year and it ended up doubling in interest
But
rate.
it's very easy to look back and say I should have done this and should have done that, isn't it? It really don't you think the whole market can just dictate its own performance really in a way? I think, Nikki, you're absolutely right. I think, you know, people today, if they go to their broker and the broker says you're a first-time buyer, it's 5%, 6%, 7%. That's what it is. Yeah. You know, you can either afford it or you can't afford it. Yeah. And that really hasn't changed very much. No. I mean, you know, if you go back when I was a kid, I mean, I think I was paying about 10% interest, and I think I was always taught that anything under 10% was extremely cheap, you know, and very good value.
Well, yeah, let's be realistic. No offence now, but it wasn't cheap money and cheap mortgages weren't going to be around forever, were they?
No.
So people should have locked their mortgage in at the time when they had an opportunity, because we know historically it doesn't stay at that level. It's not, you know, it's not sustainable.
Kind of rubbing it in there.
You see, I think all this comes back to the sort of thinking about the shortage of housing.
Yeah.
I mean, I always make this joke when Dave and George used to come on the TV with their hard hats and fluorescent jackets and say, we're going to build 250,000 homes. Who do they mean, we? Were they going to do it from Downing Street? I don't think so. So who do they mean? And you will probably both know that if developers know they can sell their product, they'll build as many houses as you want. There'll be no shortage anyway. But if people can't afford to fund those purchases, you've had it. And no amount of persuasion will make developers do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And developers are seeing a lot of uncertainty in the market, not only in relation to property prices, land values, but also the cost of construction itself as well.
Yeah.
So you may well see a number of developers sitting on their hands for now, just to see if any certainty returns to the market.
We've got developers here that have stopped at foundation level, and they're saying it's a 2-year wait now. We can't risk going in with these escalating costs of materials. You know, if you're doing a sort of £500 million building here, you can't get up halfway and suddenly think, oh Christ, the materials have doubled. You know, you're in real trouble.
Absolutely.
You best sit on your hands.
You're committed at that point.
Yeah.
Whereas get the foundations in. I'm not a planning lawyer, but get the foundations in, make sure that you've secured that, and then wait.
Yeah. I've got clients that are only selling as well off plan. So they will, once it's sold off plan, then they'll build it.
So they're getting the funding in that way?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they'll develop it once it's been agreed a sale basically on it, because it's too much of a risk. As you say, materials are going through the roof. Labour's hard to find. Good trades are hard to find. So a good trade is expensive now. And then obviously that's going to, ultimately they have to push that extra cost onto the value of the house.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, again, with costs, there's other things happening in the market. You've got sort of modular building going on, but that causes its own problems because the modular suppliers want paying up front before they'll either even produce or deliver. And of course, that's not usual in a development funding package. You know, you usually sort of, well, I want a bit for the foundations, I want a bit for the next bit, I want a bit for the bit after that. But with modular, you've got to pay for it up front and have it delivered, and nobody really wants to do that, or nobody can do that. And your funders are not very sympathetic to it as well.
No. Well, I don't think what isn't going to change is the fact that people want to own their own properties. We're in a nation that is obsessed with home ownership as well. So there's likely to be that demand. It's just whether that supply can meet that demand at the right price.
Okay, right, we'll move on. Adrian, your question. I understand that under new government legislation, eviction from a property due to either unpaid rent or default of mortgage payment is to be the subject of a softer approach by way of time extensions. Does the same apply to unpaid or late service charge payments?
Well, look, we're definitely going through a period of uncertainty, and it's very difficult, as we discussed in the last question and answer. It's a very difficult time for homeowners that are coming off their fixed rates and now met with high interest rates at the moment. The changes that are being proposed in relation to mortgage arrears aren't coming about through legislation. They're coming about through guidance that's been put together by the FCA, the Chancellor, and a group of lenders, about 75% of the high street lenders. And they've stated that they're going to show forbearance and understanding when people enter into arrears, and they can contact mortgage providers and look to agree interest-only payments without affecting their own credit rating. With regards to service charges, again, service charges are the costs that are recovered by a landlord when a landlord is carrying out repairs and maintenance and ongoing maintenance to the freehold of the building. There isn't a similar scheme, but that doesn't mean leaseholders should give up hope. As I said in a previous episode, any party to litigation, to any form of litigation, should look to engage with one another prior to actually going down the court route. And leaseholders, if they feel that the service charges are reasonable and are payable, they should contact the freeholder in an attempt to reach some sort of agreement. They should do it in writing so that they've got it in writing and they're able to demonstrate that they've tried.
I think you're just saying be upfront, really, aren't you?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Because a failure to pay service charges is a breach of lease, which could lead to the forfeiture of the lease. That's bringing the lease to an end, essentially. And where a leaseholder faces forfeiture, they can apply for relief from forfeiture from the court. Now, the court has quite a wide discretion as to the grounds on which it will grant relief. And it could grant relief on the basis that the service charge arrears are paid over a long period of time. And if that's the case, and the leaseholder can demonstrate that they'd already approached the landlord, freeholder, with that suggestion, they may be able to demonstrate that the service charges by way of legal costs shouldn't be payable to the landlord.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good happy note on which to finish.
I think so.
So I'm going to say a big thank you to Nikki Reid, founder of Nikki Homes. Thank you for coming in, Nikki. Very good answers. Thanks for the info. And to Adrian McClinton, Principal and Head of Dispute Resolution at ENW Law. Adrian, thank you for coming in. Great answers, I'm sure, great help to our viewers. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
I'm Stephen Galpin. That's all we've got time for this time. So join me again next time on Property Question Time.